everyone. So just kind of a quick notice. This is going to be the last time you'll see me reviewing anything with this setup, assuming everything goes as well. Like assuming that my stepmother returns home and there's no delays with her flight or anything. This is the last time you're going to see me do pretty much recording a review from pretty much my laptop with my camera and all that. But but anyway, getting the review itself, big thing to talk about with this chapter is how it sets up the battle dynamics of Shiki's group versus the four Dark Stars. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed at first we weren't going to get a full-on 4v4 battle royale type fight. Like something like that I think would have really shaken things up and really been an epic thing rather than just separating all of them. But as we progress through the chapter, and Mashima establishes the reason as to why he does this, which is to give our four mains a personal trial to overcome, like through pretty much fighting the Dark Stars. And yeah, you know which two I'm definitely going to be talking about, Shiki and Homura. And you know, it's funny, I never would have pictured Wizard being Shiki's opponent in a matchup against the Dark Stars. But again, very quickly, through seeing Wizard, seeing Wizard recreate an illusion of Granbull, we see what makes him Shiki's appropriate opponent. He's the one thing Shiki needs to overcome more than anything else right now are his lingering attachments, his lingering emotions that he's buried deep within him and hasn't really even addressed. He just let them fester. Because one thing especially is that despite how much Shiki has developed as a character through the series from the beginning to now, I think we can all collectively agree that the one doubt we've had for a long time is Shiki's willingness to do what's necessary to stop Ziggy. And yes, while Shiki has resolved himself to stop Ziggy, the version of what that looks like in his head is much different from the reality of what we as the reader perceive it as. And for however much Shiki has resolved himself to stop Ziggy, that also, like in his mind, that also amounts to wanting to save Ziggy as well. Whereas Ziggy has resolved himself to completely towards destroying the universe, destroying humanity. And like what happened with Elsie, Shiki's compassion towards his grandfather is a weakness Ziggy can and will exploit in the same way Wizard is doing now. So if Shiki's going to stop Ziggy, he has to commit himself 100% to it. He can have no regrets, no second guessing himself. He has to 100% commit to himself. He cannot allow any kind of weakness in any form to kind of in order to take over during that fight. Like, he has to be committed to stopping Ziggy one way or another. With Homer, on the other hand, her trial is a little more literal as she's fighting the Dark Star version. She's fighting, I think it's Brigade, I believe, who's basically the Dark Star version of Valkyrie. And right out of the gate, how is this guy a swordsman? Like, seriously, I really want to see what this guy looks like holding a sword, because he says to Homura that there are going to be one clashing swords, and I really want to know what kind of sword this guy has, because he's kind of a big. He's basically more a juggernaut than an actual swordsman. So it's like, what kind of sword is he talking about? But at the same time, you can kind of get what Mashima already is kind of doing with the battle of Brigade versus of Brigadine versus Homura. This is basically, you can almost say this is Homura's final test almost towards taking up Valkyrie's name. Like, don't get me wrong, throughout the series, Homura has definitely proven herself to be worthy of the name Valkyrie, but at this point, she like Shiki kind of need to almost prove that she has the will and determination in order to carry on that title and to basically have the courage to know that she pretty much and the loyalty that she serves Shiki, that she's willing to live and die for him, kind of thing. But yeah, With that said, let's talk about the scene where we see Holy piloting the Steel Sorceress mech suit. And yeah, between that and the emotional mindfuck Wizard put Shiki through posing as Witch, it's definitely a case of Mashima being a little too on the nose. Like, I can't even call this foreshadowing because what we see there, it literally feels like Mashima saying Holy is going to become the new Witch or Shield of Edens. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure how to feel about that because despite all the little nuggets of information and development from Holy we've gotten, as well as just her overall interactions with the crew, something in my gut is still causing me to distrust Holy. So even at this point in time, so like it's one of those things where if Mashima wants me to buy into her becoming the pretty much shield in order to protect the Eden Zero, then he has to give me a moment that's going to sell me completely on the idea of accepting her, and even more so, do it in a way where it doesn't feel like she's still acting like a spy for the Iranian States Interstellar. Because that's the other big kind of like road kind of other big wall standing in the way of me like trusting her is for as much as she has for as much as we have seen Holy warm up to the crew, that aspect of her being a member of the Interstellar faction is always going to feel like a deception. So it it it's going to take Mashima giving her a moment of vulnerability all the more important. Like I it's one of those things where I do want her to join as the new Shield, honestly, but at the same time, there's a lot of like emotional roadblocks that Mashima needs to overcome in order to make this work, honestly, for me. Also, on that note, like I think a lot of my personal feelings on it come down to the idea of replacing Witch. Honestly, just feels much more wrong compared to like replacing Valkyrie or something, because again, Witch herself, she didn't. I guess you could say she didn't have a whole lot of screen time, but for the screen time she did have in the pre time skip of Eden Zero, she pretty much was the mother of the crew. She was that motherly figure, and you can't just outright replace someone like that. You have to kind of prove that the replacement can actually live up to that legacy as well. I think, and I think that's just as important as well. Which I think, and honestly, to Mashima's credit, I think Mashima is perfectly aware of this, which is why he made this chapter to give Shiki a lot of that unresolved closure that he never got before, and just force Shiki to face the demons he's been avoiding for so long. So it'll make the transition of Holy becoming the Shield of Edens a little more emotionally easier for Shiki and for us as the audience to accept. But again, it's not going to be easy though. Like for me personally, replacing there's a bit of a more of an uphill battle in replacing Witch compared to replacing Valkyrie. Like Mashima really does need to sell us on this idea for me personally. With that said, and the final thing to talk about, the battle against Crow begins in earnest, and again, it was only a small portion of the fight, but just that small portion is enough for me to say they're already kind of fucked. And the thing is, Crow didn't really even need to do anything to like, but stand there, fire some eye beams. But it's like, it's the way Crow did it, and that really makes me scared of him. Like the way that panel of Crow firing back at the Eden Zero, and just his speech, the way he talks, you can tell that for as big as he is, he's not lacking in the precision department, and that he knows how to compensate for his large size. And by that, like the thing is, by that logic of knowing he's as big as he is, that should kind of be a weakness to him. But by making him a bigger, but by making him a bigger target, but he's the thing with Crow is he's turned that into a strength through simple means of just knowing how to judge his opponent's battle strategy, and how to counter it, and just taking those very simple measures is what proves to us why he's so dangerous. And considered one of the Galactica, like it's the little things that Crow does that shows why he's as dangerous as he is, why no one's really been able to take him down, and not just because of his size, but just because of how how aware of he is of his size, honestly. Um, Now he don't get me wrong, he's arrogant and easy to anger for sure, but he's Crow's definitely not as much of a dumbass as you'd expect characters like him to be. Um, Shifting away from that though, let's talk about the matchup of Killer versus Weiss, because honestly, with the reveal that Killer is known as the brain of Eden Zero, and honestly just hearing that in itself makes me think this probably is probably the worst matchup for Weiss imaginable, because of just the title, because just the title itself if just the title itself means what I think it means, then Killer can basically control anything Weiss makes using his ether gear. Like even Weiss's battlesuit is probably going to end up being like hacked in some way. So Weiss is going to either need to find a workaround to find a way to counter like Killer's ability, whatever it is. Again, I'm sure it's what I think it is, but even then, it's like he's gonna need Hermit's help in some way if he can. But yeah, I don't know how Weiss is gonna counter this one. It feels kind of a little harder than we think. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst Control, and just share the video around, guys. Just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.